concentration camps and arrival selections. And then all of a sudden we're in like Las Vegas at a marriage chapel with air conditioning. Um which makes it feel like commercialized. uh and Zionist narrator to remark, time to surely tell, survive the death camps, Las Vegas to visit, Mary in Sunday's little chapel, aircon and plump priest, doing it largely for D's sake. And I'm not sure like exactly what D is here, but it feels like D as in D-Day, maybe, but it could be any number of things. That's where my mind takes it, that we go from like this horrendous, horrific event, and now we're just like happy to do, things in Las Vegas and get married and have air conditioning and but yet it's still kind of cheap, right? Like it's kind of garish. You're not like staying at the really nice hotels. You're like it's Las Vegas and marriage chapels. It says motel glamour. So it's like commercialized but still kind of trashy and still kind of kitschy. Um, but D for D's sake, it could be like D-Day, it could be death, it could be I don't like I can't remember the name of the concentration camp now that started with a D. I don't remember. It could be desire. It could be like a dick. Like there could be any number of ways that you could do this, but it seems to be to me referring like being aware of like historical memories, specifically of like Jewish historical memories, and them being used to like stage and politicize things, and um seeing things repeat but being too busy with like commercial garishness um to really do anything about it. So it's an interesting entry for a poem that to me seems like it's supposed to be about joy, like a contest about joy for joy's sake. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's YOLO. I'm not sure. But that was my take on this, right?
I have to agree. It took me by surprise because, like, yeah, it's supposed to be whimsy, fun for fun's sake, and D for D's sake just doesn't seem to be going that way. It's like
Right.
the opposite of whimsy. Um, so I find that a little difficult to wrap my head around. Also, I'm sure that I'm being ignorant, but in this Tachniski scene, I wasn't sure who that was, and like doing a quick Google, all that's coming up is hockey players, and I'm like, okay, is it who? Oh, there's a Ukrainian diplomat. Maybe it's Mikolai, but even then, like, uh, do you know who this is referring to?
Not off the top of my head. Go back and it's a for me it almost Tachitsky. I don't know that it's. I mean, it could be. I don't know enough about the Ukrainian politics, but it almost feels like to me a mix between like Chotsky and like a something kind of kitsch.
Oh,
That's how I
okay.
read it. I didn't realize it was someone's actual name, so like I didn't look it up. But I
It's not,
just
it might not
picture
be.
I just pictured like a tchotchke,
Okay.
like a
I was
knickknack.
imagining it was some like artist, like the way it was capitalized and stuff. And he often references art. I thought it was either an artist or a politician that I didn't know. Um, but I think you're probably right there that it's not. Okay, well that makes sense how I couldn't find anyone. I didn't do an in-depth search, but still I was like I don't see a match for this. Um, so yeah, it kind of threw me because it wasn't the vibe that I was imagining out of this contest. Um,
Yeah, same, same. I was picturing something a little lighthearted, a little more whimsical, but we're going straight into
like
the
I said,
dark.
the deep end. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm curious where other people take it.
D for dirge.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
guess that's where we're headed. I'll go ahead and I'll read the next one, which I'm putting on the board. Oh, you've already got it there. So this is The Architecture of Pillow Forts by Thea7W7. In a world that's gray and busy, when prosaics make me dizzy, I pull on phrase of thought to see if stuffing's made of clouds or not. If play grays its tint, I trade my logic for a peppermint. When monsters crawl within the dark, I build myself a fluffy pillow fort. Curl up in my castle of cotton, but it breaks from monsters too rotten. Then I'm stuck under its walls that were so easy to make fall, trapped by the fluff I valued most of all. End poem.
Okay, so this definitely brought the whimsy into it, but it still went dark in the end.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's consequences for being whimsical. I guess I shouldn't have only cared about fluff. It's done in a whimsical way. The rhyme and short lines I thought worked with the whimsical kind of feel. And I trade logic for peppermint was fun. It's like a Jack and the Beanstalk situation, but instead we're like just getting more whimsy. And then the fluffy pillow fort, then kind of like connecting to fluff in the metaphorical way. It's like I only read fluff right now because I can't handle the darkness of like the nonfiction and the real world. So give me all the fluff. But trapped by the fluff I value most of all. If we don't try to build things up a difficult way, we don't have the foundation. So there is value in having practical things too, but this has whimsy and it goes the dark route. So it's a fun mix of the two.
Yeah, I got a lot out of a lot of similar to what you got out of it, in a world that's gray and busy when prosaics make me dizzy. So when the world's bleak and there's not a lot of good stuff going on, they try to think about good things. I pull on phrase of thought to see if stuffing's made of clouds or not. I do like that it's phrase of thought, like a frayed seam or an edge of something that you kind of pick at. And let things unravel, so it's like quite literally looking for the silver lining. If play grays its tint, I trade my logic for peppermint. So if stuff starts to seem like it's getting a little serious, they just kind of block it out. And then the monsters are too rotten, so they manage to make their way through it anyway. Then I'm stuck under its walls. Pretending that bad things aren't going on doesn't mean that bad things aren't going on. There's the difference between pretending everything's okay and just needing a moment to escape for your own mental health. And I think that's kind of what this is getting at. It is funny that you're saying that you read only fluff right now because, the way the world's going. I don't know if that was like literally you or just figuratively, but I was talking to someone literally today about that. And I was saying, no, I read only like angsty, dark stuff with like bittersweet or unhappy endings because I can't get into the fluffy stuff because I'm just like, the world doesn't work like that. Like, that's too perfect, that's unrealistic, and then I can't buy the story. And they were saying that that's the exact reason that they're only reading lighthearted stuff. It's like, it's the two sides of the same coin, right? The beauty of it, if it's fiction, it's not real. So because it's not real, it's okay if everything's light and fluffy because it doesn't have to be realistic. And because it's not real, it's okay if everyone in the story dies or has some tragic thing happen to them because it's not real. So it was just kind of a fun conversation. I thought it was interesting that it kind of tied back. But I enjoyed the write. I liked the rhyme. It made it feel a little more whimsical and light and fluffy. And I thought it was a good play on the theme while still giving like kind of an Admonition. I do wonder how many contrarians we're getting tonight about how screw your whimsy, Aphasiana.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I usually am quite dark. And then you had a series of contests, and they're like, "Oh, Aphasiana's back. I bet it's going to be dark again." And then I'm like, "Whimsy."
Well, my series was about love, which is atypical for me, but I just wanted a moment of something else.
We've switched. Well, no, we haven't switched roles. I'm still.
We're generally thematically dark on this show.
Yes, we usually are. We're but you see, we've aimed away from the darkness because the fluff needed to put a little sugar in our coffee. Yeah, it should be interesting to see how many people went anti-whimsy. This next one is by our good friend, or at least my good friend, Poetry and Percussion. And it's called Alliteration is Fun. Can't I just have fun? Floating free and fanciful seems an all alliteration attack at the whimsical whim of the writer's purposeless, prehensile pen. But floating free and fanciful is fun. It's as fun as frolicking forever in your favorite forest. Anxiety is not a mental affliction, but for me an existence that rattles and cracks my bones until I am a walking maraca symphony. And in a world where there seems to be rulers to decide who will rule over the decisions to make the rules on making rules, can't I just have fun? To write with noble hands, to inspire the satisfaction of happiness of a random reader who is searching desperately for pixelated paragraphs, for that one connection, that one conglomeration of coagulated pixels that services wisdom needed. Any potential potable, playful poem is always preferred to please, but alliteration is fun. So, what if, just what if, hear me out for a minute. Just what if we think outside the box of rules? Shift some paradigms over to the retro video game arcade. Move the needle erratic, scratching the records beyond repair while dancing to hip-hop happiness. Be amateur active. Let the ducks waddle in a squiggly, nonsensical line, dancing with the elephant who fits better in the hallway. Have no reason. I have a smile for the sake of a smile, for laughter's pure reason of lovingly floating in the wind. Everyone breathes, maybe. You're breathing in the air from a whimsical, smiling alliteration laugh right now. Be the CPR the world needs desperately. End poem.
Well, this one was much lighter. I mean, there's still reference to darkness, but it's got the opposite message, right? So this is talking about, well, it starts off with really great alliteration, just being really funny, but then saying, this seems purposeless, but it's really not purposeless. There's a lot of things in the world to be unhappy about, and in a world where there seems to be rulers to decide who will rule over the decisions and to make the rules on making the rules, can't I just have fun? Saying there's a need and a place for whimsy in this. There's a need for escapism and brightness. You can't just let everything be dark and dour. So any potentially potable, playful poem is preferred to please, but alliteration is fun. So just what if, hear me out for a minute, just what if we think outside the box of rules? Just for a moment, just forget that things are crappy and that politics are happening and that the world is shifting in a negative way. And it's not saying ignore those things forever or don't do anything about them, but also find things to be happy about. Silly things, goofy things, little ducks waddling, and joke about the elephant in the hallway. Get it out of the room and put it in the hallway for a minute. Have this say smile just for the sake of smiling. Be the CPR the world needs desperately. Bring a little light to a world where everything's shitty, not because that fixes anything, but because you can't everything can't be negative all the time, or it gets way too dark way too fast. So I thought this was a great write. What did you think, Aphasiana?
I really enjoyed it. Um, I liked the idea of a prehensile pen. Like it's just one of our appendices. It's just like an extension of ourselves that moves of its own accord almost. It can be controlled um, as like one of our hands, but it's its own thing. That the idea of the pen being that in like entranced in the writer's being is fun. I liked the use of alliteration. I liked the description of like the anxiety being that rattle and crack in the bones. But when I was first reading it, when my eye saw maraca in my head, it went mascara. Because I kind of like scan ahead as I'm reading, so I'm able to like, I don't know, plan how I'm going to say things, but like as I'm reading. So I'm from above glancing down. I thought that was mascara, and I was like, a mascara symphony. How's he going to work this? But then I was like, well, anxiety. If you're crying and the mascara becomes the and I'm like trying to like work it out as I'm reading that line. I'm like, no, it's maraca. That makes so much more sense. The pixelated paragraphs was a really interesting concept for me too, especially the one that says that one conglomeration of coagulated pixels that serves wisdom needed. It's like maybe we sometimes need to find something that says something. We're looking for the words we want to hear, and we're not hearing them, and we're not seeing them on paper anymore. We are looking for what we have like through the pixels of our screens, and just desperately hoping to get that that intake of wisdom in one way or another. And yeah, just the idea of the pixels, the pixelated paragraphs. I never think of a paragraph being pixelated, but I suppose the way I'm looking at it, it is. It's just we have lots and lots of tiny pixels, so our picture is getting better, but it really is just elements on the screen, and that's fascinating to me. It was very meta in that way. The company Meta has totally ruined saying meta for me. I think you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. That's funny. All right. I've put the next one on the board. I will give this one a read. This is Nevermore the Apology by Dawson Ray. Once upon a midnight worn, when silence learned my name, I stood there where voices sharpened, too loud to bear the flame. And there I swore in quiet steel, no longer I would bend to words that strike like careless hands that call themselves a friend. For I have learned what cannot stay when spoken over me. I am not made for being shaped by what I'm told to be. And still the echo in the dark replied within my core, no more. I will not bow to voices raised like storms without a sky, nor fold into the violence of because I said so lie. If I am spoken at, not with, I vanish from the room. A closing door, a turning key, a self constructed tomb. And in that stillness I remain where I decide to stand, not pulled by force, not bound by tone, not broken at command. And all the walls I learned to build repeat it evermore, no more. The music in my bones is mine, no permission carved in stone, a language born inside my ribs, not granted nor loaned. I choose its rise, I choose its fall, its fury and its grace. No one assigns the volume of the soul within its place. And if I sing it soft or wild, or shatter into flame, it is not yours to measure me, to quiet or to tame. The melody I claim repeats behind each open door, no more. I choose the shape of closeness too, its distance, depth, its name, the heat of love I offer, or the quiet I reclaim. You do not stand in judgment of the fire I extend, for meeting me is not a rule I force you to defend. And what I give is mine alone, not bargain, debt, or plea. A truth I carve into the air, I set the boundary. And every step I take away still whispers from the shore, no more. And when I fall into myself, retreating from the sound, do not mistake my silence for a plea to be unbound. I do not reach for rescue hands when drowning in my mind. I learned too young that reaching out does not mean I'll be found. So I go inward, folding where the world cannot intrude, a storm that does not ask for help, but learns to be subdued. And in that quiet I endure what I cannot ignore, no more. I think too much. Each passing word becomes a sharpened thread. I turn it over, twist it, till it lives inside my head. I run through every outcome like a maze with shifting walls, and wonder if I'm asking too much when my courage calls. So I stay longer than I should in places I outgrow, because I question leaving more than I question what I know. And still the turning of my thoughts repeats what came before, no more. I take it all into my chest, each fragment, wound, and sign, a world that presses meaning into every fault of mine. It makes me soft, it makes me break, it makes me feel too deep, but from that depth I learn to see the hearts that others keep. And though it hurts to carry what was never mine to hold, that fracture lets me recognize the stories left untold. And in that ache, I understand what I was built for, no more, but also more than I was told I had to be before. And still, beneath the iron law of thought that learned to bite, there's a quieter mischief stitching cracks into the night. A small defiance wearing lace, a grin behind the dread, a ghost of color curling where all the sense once went to bed. As if the mind, in its own court, but with both witness and decree, had whispered to itself in Freud's old language endlessly, that every locked and heavy door might learn a softer lore, when waking turns to ash and gray, invite in something more. Not command, not cure, not sermon carved in clinical disguise, but whimsy slipping through the seams behind the judging eyes. A flicker where the superego tried to hold the line, a carnival beneath the fear, a private pantomime. And suddenly the grave insistence of the inner law finds feathers where it once found only fracture, breach, and flaw, as if the psyche, half asleep, remembered something before, that even haunted rooms may learn to open another door. End poem.
Excellent read. You can definitely see it go with the Nevermore Poe kind of cadence, and a lot of the structural parts of it came from there. But it had its own message, and some really interesting parts put in there. I liked the line, "A language born inside my ribs, not granted nor loaned." It's like it's your own special way of thinking, way of being, way of loving, that stuff that's in your rib, what is formed within your ribs. I like the idea of a language being born there. Then there is a part that talks about where is it? Because I question leaving more than I question what I know. There's that thing where people stay in bad situations because they're afraid of the unknown. Better the devil you know. And I think that's a relatable thing for a lot of people. Where is it? I liked the line, "There is a quieter mischief stitching cracks into the night." Just stitching cracks into the night is a great phrase. And then that ending really brings us back into the prompt. Find feathers where it once found fracture, breach, and flaw. To have this idea of letting the whimsy in, and I like that it's like where it tried to hold the line. We're now changing things to allow less of the painful experience. That even haunted rooms may learn to open another door. That is a fantastic last line. I really like that ending.
Yeah, I enjoyed this piece too. I agree that it's obviously a pull from Poe, right? With the nevermore and ending with a rhyme and then no more. You've got core no more, evermore no more, door no more. Like it ends in that double line or um I thought it was interesting because again it is pretty dark, right? The vast majority of this poem focuses on negative situations, where they can't take anymore. They stood where voices sharpened too loud to bear the flame, and there I swore in quiet steel no longer I would bend. This um there's somewhere where there's yelling and fighting and argument, and they've got fake friends and they're being talked over and they're being told who to be, and they're tired of it. They don't want to fold into violence anymore. They see all these closing doors, a closing door, a turning key, a self constructed tomb. And in that stillness, I remain where I decide to stand. This, kind of enclosing themselves in this locked space. Um, and then slowly figuring out how to escape from there, but it's not until gosh, I'm trying to figure out. Like, there's a slow building of strength, right? But there's still essentially in this negative space. I choose the shape of closeness to its distant depth, its name, the heat of love I offer, or the quiet I reclaim. This kind of putting in boundaries and setting limits, but still like not still focusing very much on the negative here. It's not that recovery is positive, but it's still like an acknowledgement of the negatives. Um, and then it's not until the third to last stanza, and in that ache I understand what I was built for, no more, but also more than I was told to I had to be before. So now we're going beyond just the saying no to being abused, saying I'm not dealing with this anymore and setting down boundaries. Now we can start like looking more into like the positive side of things. A small defiance of wearing lace, a grin behind the dread, a ghost of color curling where all sense once went to bed. So now joy is starting to creep in. Whether it's wearing lace underwear so that you can smile to yourself, or lace of any kind. But for some reason, I picture when you say small defiance, I imagine it's like underwear, but that's probably just me. It doesn't actually say that anywhere. Um, and slowly learning to be happy, you know, but whimsy slipping through the seams, so these little moments of joy slowly creeping in. Which I like too, as well, because it's not like healing is instantaneous, right? It's not like I ran away from my abusive insert person here. It could be your parent, relative, spouse, boyfriend, doesn't matter. And then everything was great. No. Usually you have very few things. You probably had to leave almost everything you own at home. You left like comfort and familiarity, and you're like in this place of extreme uncertainty. Like, it's not like this magic thing. And that's to say nothing of like the mental scars, right? Like, there's a lot of working through all that needs to happen before there's just like instantaneous joy. I think it's full of anxiety and paranoia. Um, right at the beginning a lot of times. So I do enjoy the pacing from that aspect, that it kind of is indicative of the fact that it's not like I chose to be happy and I magically was. Like, that's how I was saying those kind of things are unrealistic. This is, I think, a good example of that. So I enjoyed this ride. I thought it was well done. Uh the rhyme and meter was interesting, and nice little borrowed page from Poe for a moment, but with quite its own theme. Very different content than The Raven. So, thank you for the right, Dawson Ray.
Our next poem is by Ben Hart. This is The Shapelessness Required to Belong, Part 9. Tell me, am I dreaming still? Through lungs forgetful, or the paths down which a dandelion's bones are supposed to blow? Bleak now. Will the fields of my heart flower with all that I once lent from wind? But nowhere else, nowhere else does void collide into gold. I know nothing of love, but angels sometimes swarm the corner of my eye to ask the bug entombed in a womb of a tear what forever looks like. End poem.
Well, this is an interesting piece. I've been seeing a lot more, not brevities, but shorter than usual works from Ben recently. I haven't hated it. Not that I disliked the longer pieces either, but this kind of gradual shift I've seen away from his like vignette style has been interesting. Um, this tell me, am I dreaming still? Is this real? Is what that's asking me. Like, is this something that's actually happening, or is it something that I'm making up? You know, through lungs forgetful of the paths which down which a dandelion's bones are supposed to blow. And I picture blowing on a dandelion and releasing all of the seed pods, right? And I think that's such a great imagery to pull here because it can mean like so many different things. First of all, calling them bones, I think is a really interesting choice to view that as a skeleton because they are kind of like white and black and kind of like hard, the little seed part, and they're like at the end of the dandelion's life, right? So calling him bones I thought is really interesting because then that pulls my mind also in the direction of like a wishbone because you make wishes when you blow on dandelion heads and you make wishes on wishbones, and so it just makes every little seed into a little wishbone, which I thought was very clever here. um, but also the idea that these are wishes, they've forgotten to wish, forgotten how to make hope, um, and forgotten like how to follow, like where they go. You're supposed to blow on them, but not knowing how to follow that. So to me, it's kind of like a sense of hopelessness and like a loss of like small joy, a loss of like wanting. Um, and then to have the next line be bleak now, which kind of correlates to this loss, which again the bones as a concept kind of feeds into, leaning towards like death, like a skeletal flower. Will the fields of my heart flower with all that I once lent from wind? If you're not planting the dandelion seeds, is anything going to grow? Um, you know, I also thought it was interesting that like I lent from wind, so like not to borrow is the word I would have put there, um, but I think it still means that like to have taken it loaned, to had it on loan, um, to feel like you don't own like the seeds of your own joy, that they have to be taken from somewhere else. And it says nowhere else does void collide into gold. This nothingness becomes something of like incredible value. Um, that this if something to be born from nothing. Um, I know nothing of love, but angels sometimes swarm the corner of my eye to ask the bug entombed in a womb of fear what forever looks like. And I thought this was really interesting because you've got angels talking to a bug that's entombed. Um, and a womb is interesting too because my mind takes us in a few different ways. So like my first thought is like the bug being like a fly caught in like a spider web, kind of being wrapped up and like sucked dry, because it's entombed, right? And maybe used to like lay the eggs of the spider. But angels asking this bug what forever looks like when it's quite dead. It's just like something that's supposed to be good and full of hope, not knowing the answer and asking something that's like long dead. There's just like a real bleakness to that. Like this emptiness, like you're not going to get an answer from something that's like no longer alive. And the fact that like the angels don't know is bleak as well. And then the entombed in a womb also made me think of like a caterpillar, or some kind of larval insect that goes into a cocoon and comes out something winged. you know um and to have an angel ask that what forever looks like, because they basically turn to goo in there, and it's like not the prettiest process, and I imagine, I don't know because I'm not an insect, that it's painful, and it's a substantive change to come out from that, like something beautiful and that flies and is considered in general like a more attractive form than the larva that you were, um and to know that you're transforming, and that seems like more hopeful, and yet it's still not forever, like it's still transient. So this is interesting because it's very wistful, and yet I feel like it's also kind of bleak and kind of hopeless, and at heart like very sad and very barren. It's beautiful in the same way that I feel like the book The Road is beautiful. Like, there's not really a happy ending, but it's joy for the sake of joy, um because everything is temporary, um but it's going on without promises of the future. This is a really interesting piece. Also, I don't know if it's meant to be like a shape poem, but it kind of reminds me of a cocoon. So, or maybe like a maple seed, those little twirlers. I thought it was a lovely piece. What did you think, Aphasiana?
I mean, I think you covered most of it, but I'll go through briefly anyway. The dandelion part was amazing to me. I love dandelions, and I love like how they're used in poems because they have such distinctive um, looks when they're about to become the next generation, sort of. They're so often used for wishes, and it's funny because they're so hated by so many as a weed, and yet they're also so magical. I personally really like them. So it's funny how they can be viewed in many ways, and to describe them as bones, a dandelion's bones, is just really interesting. I never would have thought of it that way, but like the way you explained it made a lot of sense to me. And then the wishbone thing, that was brilliant. I definitely didn't think of that. That was a great comment. Where is it now? Does void collide into gold was interesting to me. It's like the alchemy of emptiness. Um, that's an interesting concept. And then the bug in the eye, I didn't quite know what to think of, but when it said entombed in a womb of a tear, it kind of made me think of like tadpoles, because I know they're not bugs, but like in water, they develop into being like the polywog frog, the next stage of things. And I mean, really, now that I think about it, most wombs have like the amniotic fluid, so it's like you're in kind of a little pool anyway, like the tear. It's just fascinating to have angels ask a tiny thing what forever looks like, when they would be the ones most likely to be immortal. So what does forever look like when it's not forever? when it's your forever, which is a limited time, compared to what theirs is too big to even comprehend. I'm really enjoying this whole series that he's doing of shapelessness. Thanks, Ben. Next one is for you, and it's by Joe King. Babbler, you are on mute.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm like, why did you interrupt me to tell me what the next one was? That would make sense. This is The Tartworm by Joe King. It goes like this. A brilliantly romantic tart once wormed her way into my heart. For not too much money and some sulfur and honey, she blew away just like a fart. This next part just might sound insane, and then I let her do it again. She was out of my heart when I blew out of that fart. When I blew out that fart, but she wormed her way into my brain. Then I promptly called RFK, who told me that I'd be okay. He he said to be cool. Through phlegm, snot, and drool, it will only begin to decay. I thought things were going to get worse, till one day I married a nurse. She stabbed a small spear, pulled the worm from my ear, then beat it to death with her purse. I shall ever remain tartworm free for the rest of all eternity. The nurse has me cured, and I know this for sure by the handgun she's pointing at me. End poem.
Wow. This is the whimsy, man. This has the springiness, the kind of like childlike rhyme, the hilarious references. Yeah. the from the kind of like turn of phrase wormed her way into my heart, then twisting it into being a brain worm and referencing RFK. I mean, oh my gosh, that was so smart. Through phlegm, snot, and drool, it'll only begin to decay. That is just, I feel like in a way this should be like on a like Tonight Show. That yeah. um where is it? The wife stabbing in the ear, pulling from the ear, and then beating it with her purse. Somehow the like beating it to death with her purse is such a funny visual for me. I'm just like, oh yeah, this had me laughing for sure. I'm glad that you're the one who read it, because if I wasn't on mute, it would have been noisy. This is the kind of whimsy that I was hoping for.
Yeah, it's very goofy and fun. I mean, first of all, this heartworm makes me think of a heartworm, which is not good. But yeah, and then it's a tart, so it's like not someone great, not a good match. And it charged him money, not too much money. Some sulfur and honey, so like stinkiness. And she blew away just like a fart. So we got attached to this person, and then they just left, and it smelled bad. Not a good breakup is how I take that. Transient and stinky. And then he kept going back for more because like he got affection for her. Until like she left the heart and got into the brain. So now he's just thinking about her all the time. I love that he called RFK because that's ridiculous. Who said that it'd be okay, and then the kind of a little bit of a jab here at RFK's voice through phlegm, snot, and drool. Who said he'd be fine because it'll rot. Which makes me think of like brain rot, which is kind of funny in itself. And then being worried that things are going to get worse until you find a nurse, like you marry a nurse. And you think, oh, good, he found someone like better to love, like a more stable relationship. She stabbed a small spear, pulled the worm from my ear, then beat it to death with her purse. Okay, so he's forgotten the tart, and he's now with this nurse. And it sounds like a nice little love poem. I shall remain tartworm free for the rest of all eternity. The nurse has me cured, and I know this for sure. And then it takes a dark turn at the end. By the handgun, she's pointing at me. Like, it's not like voluntary, like, oh, I love her so much. She saved me and made me forget about this, you know, stupid person that I was in love with before. But no, it's like now I'm like forced to be in this relationship. It's just like another comedic thing. It's like you'll be loyal to me or else. So I agree. This was whimsical and silly, and yet it had a lot kind of tucked in here. Good like references and half jokes, a little bit of politics, and it's a series of limericks, um, and it's nicely a little bit of off color, silly humor. I enjoyed it very much. It was a good piece. So thank you, Joe King, aptly named.
Yes, everything I've read from him has been funny. So it's a smart name for him. Our next poem is Gravity Delayed, and this is by Moss and Memory. My seams have begun to feel too tight, spine a little rigid, angles locked too right, holding it all in place. I've become a straight line, too easy to predict. I've got to break out, find my odd angles. I unclench my jaw and let out a howl, a raw, throated call to the wild parts, until I hear myself again, an unedited voice that sings off key and leans whole into the wind. It sends me, I drop into a cradle of silk, letting my body go with the sway. The world meets me upside down. My spine lengthens to a curve I forgot, and breath spills down my ribs with the slide of Spanish guitar. Gravity delayed between notes as I lengthen my arms and fly. The silk catches my weight. For a breath I falter, then float, held by the slow rise of the strings. I turn to the rhythm. The silk takes my orbit, teasing me into another curious tilt. Coaxing a grin slips out sideways before I can catch it. End poem.
Lovely read, Aphasiana. And this is such an interesting piece. It's the cadence of it and the word choice doesn't feel particularly whimsical. It feels very almost romantic in a way. My seams have begun to feel too tight, my spine a little rigid. This uncomfortability, this lack of motion, feeling stiff, maybe even kind of aging. I've become a straight line, too easy to predict. Being caught in the same old habits every day, like life becoming kind of routine. Um, and then relaxing. I unclench my jaw and let out a howl, a raw throated call to the wild parts until I hear myself again. This loosening up, this getting in touch with more primal wild side and just making noise, howling, unedited voice that sings off key, so just letting go, and not because like you're some excellent singer doing a performance, but because you just want to make noise, you just want to let go. It sends me. So we've got this howling wolf, but then it says, I drop into a cradle of silk, letting my body go. With the sway the world meets me upside down. Um and that doesn't feel like where you would expect a wolf to go. you know? And I'm brought back to like the imagery of a cocoon, um, with the cradle of silk and being met upside down. This kind of hanging, like suspended in air. this maybe becoming the butterfly, you know. My spine lengthens to a curve I forgot, and breath spills down my ribs with the slide of a Spanish guitar. So, this enjoyment of music and sound and like refinding your body, loosening up, becoming less rigid, more adaptable. Gravity delayed between notes as I lengthen my arms and fly. The silk catches my weight. For a breath, I falter, then float, held by the slow rise of the strings. So this to me feels like the emergence from the cocoon, to have been like reborn, but not like to have not existed, but to be reformed by music, and following the cadence of it. I turn to the rhythm the silk takes my orbit, teasing me into another curious tilt. Coaxing a grin slips out sideways before I can enjoy it. So like the music's always kind of there as kind of like a backup plan. And to find like the joy from it and to be able to relax and let loose and find a new center. Um, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. It does feel like a romantic form of whimsy, not your like Edward Lear or Shel Silverstein bouncy kind of Seussian humor, but like this kind of lighter, more gossamer version of whimsy. So I enjoyed it. Thank you, Moss in Memory.
Yeah, as I was reading it, I was thinking that it was a sensual thing, and then I read in the AN that they had just learned aerial yoga. So I've watched aerial yoga, and it's so cool. Like they're on the big ribbon things, right? So the silk would be what's holding them up. That giant ribbon that works as like a trapeze kind of thing. And I feel like all of the things you said still work with that context because it works really nicely as a metaphorical kind of moment. I like what you said about the silk being like the butterfly transformation thing. I like the idea of like letting go and just like feeling like you're flying because you're freeing yourself and you're unclenching and you're letting yourself straighten out. So yes, this is all happening literally doing such a cool class. That takes a lot of physical strength actually to fall with style like that. And that being able to just like yell it out and sing and like just there would be such a freedom to being able to do that, if you were more physically coordinated than I, because I would be terrified of falling because I would. But I think one of my favorite parts was the Spanish guitar part. My breath spills down my ribs with the slide of a Spanish guitar. It's like you hear the music and it moves you, and it feels like your body's reacting to it, which sometimes like you actually can like feel a reaction to music, but also it's like that emotional connection where it spills down your ribs. It's like your heart bleeding out. You're really impacted by this, but I imagine since it's on those aerial ribbon things, it's also sliding to the sound of the Spanish guitar. But it works really nicely metaphorically there, with that the strings throughout this. Later I thought the strings were the guitar strings it's talking about. It was still talking about music, but now I think the strings could be literally what's holding you up during this aerial yoga, but it could be both. I think it works as both. This was interesting, and now I want to go to another one of those shows because watching them in the air like that is amazing. Thank you, Master Memory.
I think that was the last one in that contest.
Yes.
Would you like to introduce the next one?
I would. Thank you. So the next one was based on a picture I saw that looks to me, and I haven't found what book it was in, like it was from a Richard Scarry book. Who's a picture book artist, and it's it is a drawn out metaphor. Was posted by someone called Mostly Fine on Facebook, and it has a little picture of one side of the image is the same house with a hole in the roof, and it's raining, and there's a little dog hiding inside, and the other side there's the sun is shining. The little dog has his head poking out of the hole in the roof, looks like he's enjoying himself, and the caption is, Haggis has a hole in his roof. He never fixed it because on the rainy days it is too wet to work, and on the sunny days it doesn't need fixing. Um, so that was the inspiration, and I called it Never the Right Time, because if it's bad times, you can't handle it, and if it's good times, then you don't want to bring yourself down thinking about those problems because you have a good time going on, and how that can be a troublesome dilemma of when do you do things, because I don't want to have to do my housework when I'm exhausted after work, but I also don't want to do it when I am on my weekend and it's supposed to be my fun day. And it has to happen one way or another.
Avoidance at its finest.
Right? Yeah. I'm really good at that.
Same. I've posted the first poem to the board. It's by Jolly Tiger Banana, and it's called Never the Right Time. And it goes like this. There's always a moment I almost choose the light, foot hovering over the softer path, but something in me remembers the comfort of shadows and the impossible woman who once walked there with me. I balance between wanting to be good and wanting to be free, a thin wire stretched across every choice I circle, hearing her laughter in the places I shouldn't return to. Some days I rise clean as morning rain. Other days I carry the smoke of old habits, the ones she taught me without meaning to, the ones that still know my name. And still I keep moving toward purity, but not toward ruin. And and through the narrow space between them where her memory follows, like a shadow that refuses to fade, teaching me that the path I walk is the one I make by surviving her. End poem.
Oh, I like this. That being drawn to those things that are bad for you because of a connection that you have, an emotional connection to those things. If you, in this case, loved a woman who was a little bit dangerous, who got you into bad habits, who brought you to the dark side, so to speak, and you're tempted by those things because it reminds you of the good times you had with her. It makes you feel close to her, and at the same time, you feel like you should be running away, and you have to remind yourself of how to deal with that. A thin wire stretched across every circle, every choice I circle, hearing her laughter in the places I shouldn't return to. So when I hear that, I'm picturing, okay, like if there's like a no smoking sign, there's that little like red line that goes across it. A thin wire stretched across it. It's like there's like you're trying to block off this thing, and you only have this like tiny little bit of no when mostly you're looking at the thing that you want. And hearing her laughter in the places I shouldn't return to, it's that those memories spark up. And so that's, you want to go towards that laughter. You want to go towards that good feeling that you had sometimes. Then we have, where is it? The memory follows like shadow that refuses to fade, teaching me the path I walk. There's like this wisdom that comes from the temptation and getting past it. So, interesting. Thank you for sharing, Jolly Tiger Banana.
Yeah, I thought this was really pretty and really kind of a haunting, right? This it's interesting that there's a moment that I almost choose the light. Wanting to go the easy way is how I take that. Um and not necessarily, I don't know. I read it as, because it was described as the softer path, that in this case the light was not the right thing to do, because it'd be like pretending everything is good when it's not. Um this, the remembering the comfort of shadows and the impossible woman who once walked there with me. This remembering how hard things were, remembering how hard you worked to get here, remembering why you chose this path, because there was someone that, left you with some kind of PTSD, some kind of trauma. Um, wanting to be good and wanting to be free are not necessarily the same things, because it depends on what definition of good is. In my mind, I picture like an abusive parent and wanting to please them, and then having to remind yourself that that's not the right thing for you. Um, wanting to be good and wanting to be free aren't the same things, because being good means following some kind of rule that's been set for you. A thin wire stretched across every choice I circle, this indecision. Hearing her laughter in the places I should return to. Remembering that you had to break those cycles of wanting to please this person, of saying yes, of doing what they asked, of caving. Because boundaries are hard to hold. In a lot of ways, it's easier to just not. But when you do that, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Some days I rise clean as morning rain, so some days you feel good, and then other days you don't. Other days you're still held back by that trauma and those feelings of like inadequacy and frustration or hurt. And that those are painful experiences. And still I keep moving towards purity, but not toward ruin. And there's the distinction. They want to get better and not hurt themselves, but that's not the same thing as easy or the light. That it's actually the harder path. And through the narrow space between them, learning how to feel good about yourself, how to feel like you're enough, how you're adequate, without seeking the approval of someone that you know is not good for you. While still never really forgetting them. While her memory follows like a shadow that refuses to fade, teaching me that the path I walk is the one I make by surviving her. This is the hard route, but it's the right route. So that's how I read it. It was a great piece. So, great write.
All right. Our next one is by Rick 6. This is Parallel Barking. The three dogs across the street spend a lot of time barking. They bark at birds, squirrels, people down the street, people passing by, delivery drivers, cars, you name it. They don't line up abreast at the fence, though. The barkingest one stays close to the fence. He's the instigator. The next barkiest dog stays behind him. The quietest barker brings up the rear. I call it parallel barking. And Paul.
It's not parallel parking. Not the same thing. It is funny to observe like the dogs across the street and the way that they bark. I do appreciate that they don't seem particularly like angry or annoyed with the neighbor and their barking dogs, they've taken a really lighthearted approach to this, where they're just like, "Huh, the dogs bark, and look how they bark." And they bark in a certain order, and they seem to have roles, and he doesn't seem like necessarily mad about the incessant barking of the dogs across the street. So good on him. What a nice neighbor. All the things they bark at: birds, squirrels, people down the street, people passing by, delivery drivers, cars, like anything that there is to bark at will be barked at. And they have kind of a pecking order. So it's kind of funny. Parallel barking. It reminds me, like, my dog has learned how to open the screen door. And so when there's now stuff outside that she wants to go bark at, if someone hasn't locked the screen door, she just nudges it open and helps herself to go out barking. I've caught her a few times now. It's kind of funny. Oh, also my dog is very smart, but in an annoying kind of way. So I used to have a doorbell for her that she would ring when she wanted to come inside. But she started to get really annoying with it, with like the in out, in out. And she knows I'm going to leave her outside for like 10, 15 minutes in the morning while I get dressed. But she knows I'll bring her in if she starts barking, because it's too early in the morning and I don't want to piss my neighbors off. So now, as soon as she wants to come in, she just goes to the fence and starts barking, even though there's nothing over there. She's barking because she wants me to let her inside.
Sneaky.
She's sneaky, she's smart, and it's often annoying. Love her, but sneaky. Anyway, I enjoyed this. In some ways, I think it is more whimsical than some of the whimsical pieces.
I agree. it's whimsical, and I think it would have been better in the whimsical one than in this one, because I don't totally see the connection on like how it's never the right time. Where, if anything, it's like, I guess barking can feel like it's never the right time, but it's not like I'm not going to fix it because it's good, or not going to fix it because it's bad. It's just like, and they barked. I don't know, but I don't quite follow how it connects. I enjoy it. I think it would be great for the whimsical one, and I kind of want to hear this, like, I think, especially if they had different kinds of barks, it could be like almost musical. It's like the one kind and then the other kind, and then they slowly fade away into the quieter one. It could be an interesting little music thing going on. But yeah, I don't really understand how it connects to the prompt.
I'm neither. There is a picture of 3 dogs attached to this poem, that doesn't seem to be credited anywhere, which makes me wonder if like these are the actual dogs that do the barking. That entertains me.
That, I hope that it is, because they're cute.
Anyway.
Our next poem is Never the Right Time by Louis the Seventh.
So this author did message me, and they told me it's loveful, and they just switched the V and the U.
Oh, okay.
So it is loveful. Anyway. And I believe it's my turn to read, so I'll give it a read. This is Never the Right Time. The arms of the clock are broken. It's a compound fracture. On time is a myth when it's all manufactured. Seconds pass by, but I'm racing for firsts. Only evidence of its movement is the accumulation of thirst. Hours elapse, but I'm singularly traversing. The face on my watch offers the other cheek while turning. To be possessed by it, and never even fight, makes one a coward of existence, 'cause the time will never be right. End poem.
This is fun. I like the use of the clock, and the time never being right, being like a play on the literal time, and then the time not right, as in the way we're talking about it in the contest. and on time being a myth when it's manufactured is somewhat true. I mean, like time is a social construct in many ways. Not entirely, because like the sun dictates time for many creatures. They have specific times of day, times of the like light cycle and whatnot that they do things depending on what creature they are. Actually, when I was trying to fall asleep the other night, I was listening to this little sleep story that was it's through Calm, which is like a bunch of sleep stories to help you sleep. And it was an owl character who was explaining the bedtime routines of many different animals, and this just makes me reminded of that, about how like the time isn't entirely a human thing. But I think this is clever the way it was done, especially the second stanza. Seconds pass by, but I'm racing for firsts. Like second as in the time here, the time interval, but also second as in like got second in the race. I thought that was a clever use of the word. And then where was the other part? There was at the end, makes one a coward of existence because the time will never be right. And always, you know, even if we're not just talking about it not being the right time to do something, there's always something that we're procrastinating about. There's always something that wasn't quite aligned. You met the person at the wrong time in your life. You did there's so many things where time messes with you, and the use of the clock face to do this, like the part with the turning the other cheek, was cute. Is this creative? I thought this was well done.
I also thought this was like a nice little play on things. It does kind of have like this bouncy rhythm and rhyme structure that again makes it whimsical. I know we're past the whimsical theme, but I feel like we just have a bunch of contrarians writing.
Well, for real, because all of these seem more whimsical than my whimsical one.
Right. We're like, write about whimsy, and it's like, no, screw you, the world sucks. And then we're like, okay, write about how like write about avoidance and like how it's like a mental health thing where it's like an executive dysfunction, and the people are like, I will make this light and bouncy. So um but yeah, this, you know, the arms of the clock are broken. It's compound fracture. I thought was really funny. So you know, both arms are broken. Time isn't even real. They're struggling for firsts, and they're getting thirsty and things, and it's just not working out. And, like, but the so you can tell the time's passing, but it's just like a construct. Essentially, this is like how time is a construct. And yet they're still feeling effects of this time. You know, the thirst and the trying to be first, and to be possessed by it, to have to operate by the rules of time, because the time is like never right to do anything, and it makes one a coward of existence, to be possessed by it. So like to let a ticking timer like like I'm trying to think of the right words, to let time dictate the way you spend your entire life is like be a slave to time. You know, time is never right. So like don't do something because it is or isn't the right time to do something. Do it for other reasons. You know, don't obsess too much over time. It makes me think of things like, oh well, I wanted to be a doctor. Well, why don't you go be a doctor then? Well, I'm 40. Okay. Well, school takes 10 years. Okay. In 10 years I'll be 50. Well, you're going to be 50 in 10 years either way. So you might as well be a doctor, you know. this kind of just thinking of the way you think of time. It's really the only thing in our lives that has value. Like that's what you get paid for is time. So who you spend it with and what you do um, should be part of that consideration. Don't be a part of the rat race. Enjoy your life. But yeah, it is funny and kind of whimsical, despite not being part of the whimsy contest.
I think we have to ask for the opposite of the mood we're in.
Right? Write me a poem about death and self-loathing. Go.
And it would be like happy little frolics through the graveyard.
Don't think about death. Be happy. Oh, okay.
Okay. Our next one is by Jay Spades, and this is called Into the Purple Petals She Goes. Colorless except for a deep suicidal purple was the face, as her legs bare a swollen blackness, bruised and shaking, choking on the vomit of an overdose. She lay, her pounding head on stained carpet, letting go of this rag doll pass around, smothering life into the next. The floor brightens into purple petals, where her wakeless eyes would have seen more dark, staring at the abyss of a fruitful wonder she lived, and now here to see, here to be emptied of her shadow self. Alive, she felt things in her head nobody could quite explain. But dead, all the power that was in her mind explodes, heavenly, this next life. And God cries chemical tears, knowing soon all this pain will disappear. End poem.
Well, this is an interesting write. First of all, the title I thought was really pretty. Into the Purple Petals She Goes. It sounds like really sweet. But it's really kind of not, colorless except for a deep suicidal purple was the face, as her legs bear swollen blackness, bruised and shaking, choking on the vomit of an overdose. So someone who wants to die, someone who is actively suicidal, laying down on a carpet, um, in the act of dying. And she would, she wanted to not be in pain, where her wakeless eyes would have seen more dark, staring at the abyss of a fruitful wonder. She lived, and now here to see, here to be emptied of her shadow self. Um, she lived in this really dark and hopeless existence and just wanted to escape it. Um, and was kind of eaten at by this darkness. And then it says, all the power that was in her mind explodes heavenly this next life. This redo, this after death, could be like really beautiful. All the power that was in her mind explodes heavenly in this next life. This this life is over, it's ended, it's gone. And there's just kind of this blowing up of like energy is how I view it. All of the things that you could do are kind of just ended. And then you've got these last two lines, and God cries chemical tears, knowing soon all this pain will disappear. The idea of them being chemical tears, it makes me think of like acid rain or something like really toxic. The word chemical just makes me think like manufactured. Like I know chemical is so funny because most people think of it, including myself, as like an industrial thing, like industrial chemicals. And of course, the more biologist, science-minded side of myself goes, everything's a chemical. That's why I get weirded out when people use the word chemicals. It's like, oh, there's all these chemicals. Yeah, everything is chemicals. But in this context, it definitely feels like tainted, like toxic tears, knowing soon all this pain will disappear. It's a little hard for me to follow in some places, but what I think the overall theme here is that this god is knowing that the afterlife can be really beautiful, and that life is finite, and when you die, like, all the pain disappears, but that life wasn't really appreciated, that it was just like only viewed as dark and painful and had very little joy in it. um I thought Never the Right Time is an interesting concept for this, because it's you know sometimes that's the only thing that's kept me alive, when I've been in like the darker stages of my life. I always look for like one more thing, right? So it's just like, well, maybe I'll end it when this happens, or after this date, or after this thing, or after that thing, until I get out of the depression. um because it's really hard when you're super depressed and feel like it's never going to end. I've been dealing with this bipolar thing for a couple decades now. uh so it's weird because now I reflexively know that it will end, but in times where I was worse and didn't realize that it would end, that's how I slogged myself through it. It's just knowing, well, I've got this one thing to look forward to, so after that, and then I'd try to find some other thing and just kind of limp along like that. You know, you only really need one reason why. So it's a dark piece. It's definitely metaphorical. I love that title though. I thought the title was really beautiful. So thank you, Jay. What did you think of Aphasiana?
I agree that the title is beautiful, and it is a dark piece. But the chemical tears, while I totally understand where you're coming from with chemicals being a negative thing, I kind of thought of it as like almost like cathartic tears, because like the chemicals are released in your brain when you cry, and it's part of why like sometimes you feel better after you cry, because it's like you let out, I don't know the science of it, but there is like certain hormone things happen when you cry, and it helps release something. I should have looked up this answer before I'm saying it. I know that there's something like good about crying sometimes, where as much as it makes you feel like shit, it also relieves pressure. And I don't mean like the physical pressure of the tears, but like there's a chemical release in a happy hormone kind of way that happens. I explained that terribly, but hopefully someone will kind of understand what I'm talking about. It's interesting because I would not think of purple as a suicide color. I can see it now, but like generally red is what I think of, because like blood. So different to think of it as suicidal purple. That's different. There's a grittiness to this, like the choking on your vomit part, like that is it's gritty. The floor brightens into purple petals is beautiful, even though it's a really scary moment. The like staring into the abyss and like dying, and yet there's the beauty to it. Being able to let go of all these things as you move on. And it's back to those chemical tears, which yeah, I chose to take it as like a release of the toxins so you feel better.
I can do that.
Although I mean it's God, so that
Yeah.
it's not the person suffering who's doing it. It's God. So Noah's Ark situation. I don't know.
40 days of chemical rain. No. Yeah.
Chemical tears.
I know. I was making a Noah's Ark reference.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking. I know. I was going for that. I was picturing the like cartoon god crying and the water rising.
Yeah, I'll say the part for this that was a little confounding for me is I couldn't tell the direction emotionally. Like, was the suicide a release? Or was the suicide like a disappointment for God? And it's kept kind of vague in here. It doesn't really put like the judgment on that. It's really kind of open for interpretation, which I thought was interesting.
I like that that's vague, that it could go different ways.
Oh. Anyway, the next piece is It's Never the Right Time by Ollie Heindel 5. It's never the right time. I always say the wrong things at the right time. It feels like nothing will ever really be mine. Part sinner, part saint. My love is painted, soul is tainted. I'm trying my best to compensate, writing poems, hoping you relate. I can cower, I can bite, but the time will never be right. I'll push away the ones I love. I can be a hawk, or I can be a dove. Please ignore everything I've done. I can be feared, or I can be a fawn, crying in my sleep, then waking up at dawn. Wipe my eyes and wonder are my friends gone? I'm cruel, I am gentle, I could be your wife. I am mean, I am kind, I could be your life. End poem.
I liked the use of spacing in this. I feel like there were some good pauses. Like how it had like the longer lines and then the short lines and then the longer lines and then the short lines. Somehow that back and forth was like comforting to me. So it's kind of a weird way to look at it, but there's a gentleness to that. But and there's the conflict here where definitely they're writing to the part sinner, part saint, not just to the specific contest, which happens quite a bit. So really, I think this is to the show rather than to the contest in this particular right. But I still enjoyed hearing it, and where was it? I have lost the part. It kind of reminds me of the Alanis Morissette song Alanis Morissette song "Bitch," because it's like I can cower, I can bite, I can be feared or I can fawn. It's like that back and you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about, yes. I do.
I like that song, but this gives me like it's just like a continuation, personalized version of that song.
1994, one of the best years in music and movies ever.
In my life, I think.
I mean, it was just a wild like explosion of like apex Gen X art in general. 1994 was a big year. Anyway, that is completely tangential. uh did I read that one? I need to comment. My gosh, I'm spacey. I thought this was really an interest. Like, to me, it felt like this piece was like a pleading to be accepted, like as you are in this moment, while kind of also paired with a lack of self confidence So it has a little bit of like desperation to it, to say, I always say the wrong things at the right time. It feels like nothing will ever really be mine. There's this extremism in this. It's very like black and white. You've got always say, nothing will ever really be mine. Like it's very absolutionist in this opening. Um, my love is painted, soul is tainted. I'm trying my best to compensate, writing poems hoping you relate. I'm flawed. Like I have dark parts of myself. I'm not a perfect person. I say the wrong things. I feel like I'm constantly messing up. Even these things that kind of alternate, right? This I can cower, I can bite. Both those are kind of not great, right? Like to hide and whimper or bite. Neither, if you're thinking in the terms of like a dog, which is where Maya goes, are behaviors you want to encourage. Um, but the time will never be right. I'll push away the ones I love. Like this to me is about like I can't really focus on being a perfect person because it's just never going to happen. I'm never going to be a perfect person. If I wait to like love somebody or reciprocate the love I have for the people around me, it just isn't going to happen because I'm not perfect. I can be a hawk or I can be a dove. That one's a little more neutral because dove is at least seen as like peaceful, but they're also kind of gross to be honest. Um please ignore everything I've done. Like please overlook my flaws. I can be feared or I can be a fawn. This kind of duality. Like, yeah, I can be scary, but I can also be like really sweet and nice. Crying in my sleep and then waking up at dawn. Wipe my eyes and wonder, are my friends gone? In like this moment of weakness, you know, did everyone around me leave me? You know, um, because of my mistakes and my flaws. I'm cruel, I'm gentle. I could be your wife. That line was a little interesting to me. Um, this, hey, I really want to be with you. I could be your partner and things. And yet I thought it was really interesting because it just felt a little out of nowhere compared to some of the other lines in this piece. It's fine, like there's nothing really wrong with it, but it just stood out very sharply to me. I am mean, I am kind. So again, this kind of duality, I could be your life. Like if you loved me, if you decided to love me back despite my flaws, like we could be, you know, together forever kind of a thing. Um so that feels like kind of a it's like a pleading to be loved and to have their love accepted. Um with the acknowledgement that they're not a perfect person. But I feel like they've hammered like so heavily on their flaws that it does feel a little desperate. A little lack of confidence. And I don't mean like you're being a little desperate, like, like some kind of like degrading commentary, as much as it is an actual feeling. It's like, please, please love me. Is the message I get from this. And it's a little sad, and a little hopeful at the same time. So I thought this was a good write.
Our next one is by Poetry and Percussion. We did hear from him earlier, but that was for the other contest. So this is called Searching for the Third Realm Beyond Caves and Spaceships. We all hide. How many of us are a golem? What is our ring? In a cave of darkness with nothing to see, so easy to hide. I am duality doppelganger within myself. I live under the covers and dreaming safety zone, a cave of comfort no one can enter. The universe is big, and somehow it always calls for me. And the other me is now out within it, an entire world below, an eternity above. I am the middle of it all. But I'm here and alive, a survivor, as all are. A time traveler, a space explorer. I can go anywhere, do anything. If I don't care, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Caring? It all looks good and comforting on the outside, as all caskets do. In between voids, I wonder, as the actor hides their perpetual fright, the cave I hide in, it's just waiting for what I know not. But what if I wasn't frightened? Anywhere, in caves and spaceships, anywhere. I wish there was a third realm. End poem.
I thought this is an interesting piece as well. Um, I liked the little references in here. This kind of like sci-fi fantasy aspect of it, because it makes it kind of, I don't know, it adds a little bit of a lighter layer that keeps it for me from getting like as dark as it could be. You know, we all hide. How many of us are Gollum? What is our ring? You know, like what is the thing that you obsess over? What is your weakness? You know, what is your addiction, so to speak, you know? In a cave of darkness with nothing to see, so easy to hide. You know, you can hide these things well if they're things that, you know, that you're not showing other people or talking about. You know, I am duality doppelganger within myself, like a multifaceted person. And I relate to that a lot too. You know, like you don't walk around showing like the worst aspects of your personality most of the time. You know, in public you kind of put on a brave face, right? And you smile and act like everything's all good as best you can. But you probably don't act like that necessarily when you're alone. Especially if you are like dealing with things um you know that you just don't want other people to see. And it's so funny too because it can be really like a double-edged sword because it's like I'm not well, I'm pretending to be well, and then I get mad when people don't realize I'm not well, which makes no sense. That's how it is, right? Why can't they tell I'm suffering when you've put on like a brave face all day? um so anyway, uh this, you know, concept of hiding your flaws and hiding your weaknesses. And I think like all animals really do that. I think of like cats and stuff where you really can't tell that they're suffering until they're like in serious pain. And I think humans and a lot of animals are actually a lot more like that than we attribute, you know, for. The universe is big and somehow it always calls for me. Is kind of like this change in tone in the piece. You know, this being kind of called out to explore. You want to hide in your safe little cave, you know, hoarding your little, you know, dragon's treasure or whatever you're doing, and kind of keep your broken little pieces of yourself away where no one will see them. And yet, you don't want to live entirely in there. You do want to go out. You do want to go see the world and experience things. So then you do. Um, and you're I like this stance a lot, you know, but I'm here and alive, a survivor as all are, a time traveler, a space explorer. I can go anywhere, do anything if I don't care. Well, that's the problem, is it? Caring. It's true. You can achieve a lot of things if you stop caring about other things. Things are such a trade-off, you know. I don't think there is such a good thing, like such a thing as a like benevolent billionaire. um you don't accumulate that much wealth and resources by being kind and giving. Those are like opposite things. um and so you can do and achieve a lot of things if you just decide not to care about other things. It looks good and comforting on the outside, as all caskets do. Yeah, I really like that too. You know, there's danger to adventuring, just like there's danger to hiding in your cave all day. Yeah, there's intrinsic danger in exposing yourselves and taking risks. You know, the cave I hide in, it's just waiting for what I know not. But what if I wasn't frightened anywhere, in caves and spaceships? Anywhere. I wish there was a third realm. You know, this wanting to be free of fear. This wanting to feel like you can do anything. You know, finding this middle ground of existence where you don't want to hide in your little hidey hole, covering up your flaws, afraid to go outside, but you also don't want to get like exposed on the outside and die from like danger, you know. And it can be anything. I know I'm being vague about it, but because it can be like anything. You can get like mauled by a bear, you can fall from a plane, some rando person can just come and punch you in the face for no reason. Like there's literally like a million different ways that like bad things can happen outside your home. But the truth of the matter is like bad things can happen at home too. There's no real such thing as a safe space. So, you know, finding that middle ground is like really imperative. I think there is a third realm. And I think some people actually live there, and I'm incredibly jealous of them. I liked this piece, but I like all the different. I like the things that are used for like the inner sanctum and stuff used for an exploration too. My last note that I'll make is I have a sticker on my water bottle that I use at work that was like, "Go adventuring, go outside. The worst that's happened is you'll get eaten by a bear." Because that is just funny to me. Because it's like that doesn't even sound that bad. It doesn't
No,
sound good,
actually,
but
there's so much
worse things can happen. I'm like, I don't think the person who made the sticker doesn't think bad enough. I'm like, my mind spirals much worse. I'm like, is that all? It's a very optimistic sticker, in my opinion. Anyway, thank you for the right.
Yeah, I loved the Lord of the Rings reference, like right off the bat. How many of us are Gollum? What is our ring? What's the thing? I think I like that of us, like we're all seeking something that was precious to us, or that we believe will be precious to us, and the Gollum reference just naturally makes me go like my precious, and like the having that like uncontrollable drive to get something where it makes you stop caring about anything else. And then the idea of a cave where like often a cave is seen as something scary, like, you know, like if you're in like video games or something, you go into a cave, you know, you're going to get attacked. This is like the place where like there will either be a scary animal or there'll be like a zombie or like some like there'll be bad things in a cave. And yet caves really for most creatures are a thing of comfort. That's why they're in there when we go in. It's because we're in their house. Of course they're gonna be mad. The for the bear, a cave is a cozy thing. And then when he talks about like being under the covers and dreaming, a cave of comfort. Yeah, when we make our little pillow fort, that is a version of a cave too. It's like the opposite of like the scary idea of a cave, that like going into the spooky dark, make it a good kind of dark. Hide under those covers. The calling of the universe also kind of reminds me though of like the call of the void, that urge to like jump off the building kind of thing, and not as being actively suicidal. It's just like that pull. And so that kind of goes into this thing of like, just like the cave works both ways, that calling, it's pulling you out to adventure, but is it pulling you out into the void or is it pulling you into something good? And sometimes you don't really know what kind of pulling the universe is grabbing you with. The casket line was fantastic. All looks good and comforting on the outside, as all caskets do. Because what a pretty box. And like I mean, not all caskets, but a lot of caskets that people buy now, like, holy shit, that's nicer than we have in your life. I'm like, could I just have like a good bed throughout my life? And once I'm dead, I don't care. But yeah, it's that idea of like, it's beautiful until you're stuck in it. And I think that idea of it's good until you're trapped in it is true of a lot of things, you know, like a relationship can appear beautiful from the outside but might also be somewhere that you're suffocating, or that you feel like you're just done in. So there's a lot of creativity with that, and I feel like just that one line could be a prompt for a whole other thing, which in my opinion is a good way to go. We are definitely gonna have carryovers because I hadn't even put them all on the board, and we didn't make them through. Actually, we've made through everything that I put on the board, but there's probably about at least half a show left worth of poetry for that second prompt that we will have to do next week. So thank you for everyone submitting things and letting us read them out loud. Thank you to Pam for being our behind the scenes person, making things work as we figure out our new software. So I guess if you're listening to this, you figured out our new location. So I was gonna like give the website. I'm like, wait a minute, you're already here.
True.
And thank you, Babbler, for being here and having such amazing comments.
And thank you, Aphasiana, for knowing what's actually going on. And hostessing the show.
I try to know what's up. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Good night, everybody.